Thank you, Representative Meng. At this time, the chair recognizes Mr. Palazzo for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Attorney General Garland, thank you for being here today. I would like to briefly address the crisis that we have at our southern border. It seems to be somewhat of a manufactured crisis, but it is a crisis. It is a huge challenge. We basically have an invasion taking place in our southern border. And listen, I know we got to handle this in a humanitarian way, and I'm all for that, but we're also a nation of law and order. And without law and order, we're creating chaos. My biggest concern is the flow of people, not those who are coming through the points of entry, but it's the ones that are taking advantage of this crisis. And it's the human trafficking, it's the drug smuggling, it's the bringing in of foreign nationals, some who have been apprehended that we know are on the terror watch list. So can you address what is the Department of Justice seeing at the border? Are there foreign actors coming across that could be dangerous? I mean, what are we doing? I mean, because we all respect, the FBI and our law enforcement communities and officers, and I just feel like that we're just adding a huge burden upon them, but more so upon our local law enforcement officers who are going to have to be basically dealing with the criminal activity that's coming across and the hard narcotics in their backyards. Can you quickly address what the Department of Justice is doing, and how are you advising the administration to get this under control?
Look, the issue of major narcotics traffickers sending narcotics across the border is a vital concern to us. Particularly now the transition to the synthetic opioids, to the fentanyl analogs. The precursors of these are coming in some part from China, moving into Mexico, then moving across the border. We have put a lot of effort into interdiction and into enforcement on this. We're spending $2.2 billion in the current FY21 budget across DOJ for immigration Southwest border enforcement. This funds our DEA agents, and as I mentioned in the previous question, our prosecutors in the Southwest border. One of the first things I did internationally as Attorney General was to speak to the Attorney General of Mexico to seek and confirm his cooperation with respect to fighting transnational narcotics organizations, and he pledged his support to this as well. So this is a serious problem, and we are seized with it.
Well, one thing's for sure, the transnational criminal organizations are making a fortune off the crisis at the border, and the flow of drugs. I mean, if you just look at what the Coast Guard's pulling off the oceans before it makes its way into America, and we're talking about hundreds of millions of tons of cocaine over the past several years, and it's going to be a huge crisis. I mean, we already have so many issues facing our country. Real quick, can you address what are we doing to counter China, especially in their theft of international or intellectual property? We know they love to steal our technology, and it's actually allowed them to close the technological gap to actually exceed us in some areas, which is a national security crisis as well. But it's also just a theft of trillions of dollars of our resources paid for either private or public institutions here in America. Obviously, it's unfair. They don't see it that way. They see it as all being, fair game to steal other countries, intellectual property. What's the DOJ doing to counter that? And are y'all prosecuting individuals engaged in theft of our international property?
Well, within the last month or so, the intelligence community has identified China as a threat in precisely the regard that you mentioned with respect to espionage, with respect to theft of intellectual property. The FBI is working very hard on these issues. There's also obviously an important cyber crime and a cyber hacking element of this. So a lot of money and new resources are being put into protecting against that hacking and then prosecuting where we're unsuccessful in protection and then plugging the holes.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate your time and yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Palazzo. Thank you, Ms. Meng. Mr. Palazzo, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Cartwright. This is somewhat of a technical question, Attorney General Garland. So if you don't have the exact answers, maybe you can submit them to me later. But the coronavirus pandemic has accelerated interest in the potential to use new technologies to facilitate the capture of fingerprints required to search federal and state criminal history record systems. Law enforcement organizations, as well as populations who are required to undergo FBI fingerprint-based background checks, desire to have new approved methods to capture and submit fingerprint images to the FBI using contactless technology. So, three-part question. Where is the FBI in its evaluation and approval of contactless technologies to acquire and submit fingerprint images to the FBI databases? What timeline is the FBI working from to enable new contactless acquisition methods? And please specify the timetable for FBI's evaluation and approval of these new technologies. We are aware that the Transportation Security Administration, as well as many state law enforcement agencies, have immediate need to use new contactless technologies and request that the FBI prioritize and expedite its evaluation of these new capabilities.
Well, Congressman, you did hit the nail right on the head. This is an area that I don't know the exact answer with respect to the contactless fingerprint technologies, but I can assure you that my team will get back to you on that. We'll find out what the answers to your question, including the timeline question, and get back to your staff as well.
Well, I would really appreciate that. And I know it's been mentioned several times during this hearing that lacking specifics to the president's budget request. I do know that when I was serving on a House Armed Services Committee, a popular question that we would ask the Joint Chiefs of Staff and others is, what keeps you up at night regarding the safety of the United States of America? Can you share with me maybe some of the things that you have grave concern about in protecting America and the Americans?
Right. So my oath is to protect the Constitution and Americans from all enemies, both foreign and domestic. Both forms of terrorism are of extraordinary concern to me. We never want to take our eyes off of what happened on 9/11 and of the risks that the country continues to face from foreign origin terrorist attacks on the homeland. Likewise, we have a growing fear of domestic violent extremism and domestic terrorism. And both of those keep me up at night every morning. Virtually every morning, I get a briefing from the FBI in both one or the other or both areas. Since the last time I was in the Justice Department, when both were concerns as well, the lethality of weapons available to these kind of terrorists, both foreign and domestic, has increased. The consequence of the internet and encryption means that they can send information and make plans much more swiftly and in greater secrecy than could have been done before. So we have an emerging and accelerating threat, and the department is putting its resources into defending the country with respect to both. Needless to say, this is an all-of-government problem and an all-of-government solution. Department of Homeland Security, extraordinarily important in these areas. And with respect to the foreign threats, obviously our intelligence services and the Department of Defense.
Attorney General, I appreciate you being with us today. And I thank the men and women under your jurisdiction and their families for their service and sacrifice. So with that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Palazzo. Mr. Case, you're recognized for 5 minutes.